everyone. This is week 4. We are checking out some FanDuel Cafe Value. How's it going, Jason?
Doing well, doing well.
Doing well? Scale of 1 to 10.
Like a 7.
That's horrific. Why a 7? What do you have, a cold or something?
No, I'm ready. It's 4:20 in the afternoon, Friday. I'm ready to go.
Oh, 420. We see what you're doing, Jason. A little subliminal messaging.
That
Yeah,
happened.
okay.
It just no, it was just perfect timing. That's
Yeah, all
what
right.
happened.
No, that's cool. We see you, bud. No worries. Uh, Anyhow, another exciting week. I actually think this one sorts itself out pretty well. What are you looking at for quarterbacks here? The optimizer threw out Cam Newton, Kirk Cousins, Matthew Stafford. Is that generally what came out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the three guys that I'm really looking at, kind of top to bottom. I mean, obviously, I do like Philip Rivers. I like some other options like Brian Hoyer. Um, I think the one thing you can take away from this is that Cam Newton can pay off that price tag pretty easily, which is something that's good. Obviously, 9,300 is expensive, but going up against this Atlanta secondary that's been shredded by three quarterbacks already this season, it's hard not to really like him and like his stacking options. And with all the value at running back, with the value at wide receiver, tight end, you can really kind of go up and use Newton and still kind of get some other options in there with him, especially here on FanDuel. Kirk Cousins I like as well, GPP guy for me. Borderline cash, I look at that 27 total, and I think I don't see any way that hits unless it's through the passing. I don't see just that running game really doing much. Obviously, look at that Cleveland secondary, very, very average at best. 7,600 is just a great price tag for Kirk Cousins. I would like to deploy him probably more than I am this week. But he slides in nicely. I'm curious to see kind of how his ownership really shakes out.
I'd imagine, he'll have some, but there's enough good options that, I think it's still reasonable tournament play. As far as Matthew Stafford goes, 8,300. I like this.
I do too. I mean, 1,000 less than Newton on the road at Chicago. Chicago's missing another corner this week. With Marvin Jones playing the way he is, with Golden Tate, with Eric Ebron, Anquan Bolden, Theo Riddick, he has just a ton of options to really work with. And we know he's going to throw the ball 40 times. That's just one of the things you're kind of guaranteed with Stafford at this point. So in this matchup, I like Stafford a lot. He's a cash game guy if you want to use that 1,000 from Newton to pay elsewhere. Lions are a great stack this week. I like pairing him with Jones. So Stafford all around great play. I just think in terms of volume and what he's going to be able to do against the Chicago secondary. And if it's anything like we saw last year in 2015, get ready for possibly a top scoring week from Stafford.
Is it, as a big fan of Calvin Johnson, is it bad that I like really subtly hate Marvin Jones right now? Like, I kind of wanted them to feel like the losing of Calvin Johnson, and they're just like picking up and being better. It kind of is upsetting to me.
Do you remember the first week when Marvin Jones and Stafford just absolutely lit up the Colts secondary, which was expected? It had a lot to do with everyone being out. The game flow set things up perfectly. But we came into pods the next week, and I was like, I think the Lions might be better. And you stopped me right away. Like, you didn't even let me say it. But
yeah, because I'm mad.
Dude,
I'm mad online.
I
Like, this would be the thing that, like, I'm not a big troll in actuality, but this would be the one where I go on a website and I just make a fake username and go on message boards. Like, Calvin Johnson retiring and them being better without him, that's gonna, turn the lever to trolldom for me, I think.
I think it just opened doors. I think it's like the offense just expanded to new levels because I think the focal point is now just the entire team. It's not just Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, well,
we're only 3 games in, so I'm not going to jump all over that and say it's right away, but it could be possible.
Well, I like my one-man freight trains. That's why I like LeBron, because he's always just a one-man freight train, unless you're talking about Kyrie Irving. But anyway, we're not going to get into that because that's a very hot takey situation. Running back, Melvin Gordon, Mark Ingram, David Johnson, not in that order at all. David Johnson, number one, Melvin Gordon, and Mark Ingram in that order. What do you think?
I like this group. And I think you're looking here at David Johnson. It's not the most ideal matchup. I do like Los Angeles' front seven quite a bit. But the fact that he's still going to run the ball a ton, still going to get his touches through the pass and the run game, I think he's certainly going to be able to pay off the price tag. He's used inside the red zone. He just offers a ton. And I just think still at home, Arizona still has a reasonable total to kind of go after. I do like Fitzgerald. I do like Johnson. I think those are intriguing targets. I don't find myself getting a ton of exposure outside of that to the secondary pieces. I think it's going to be a lot of the big guys that do the damage. Great swerve off of Le'Veon Bell, who's not here. I think his projection is just a little bit lower because of we're not quite too sure what to really expect in that first game back from the Chiefs. We know the volume's going to be there, but I'm not going to jump all over and says he goes for 150 and 2 touchdowns.
Really? Because my base projection is like 250 and 3. So
that's
I
what
don't
it
know
seems everyone's banking on. I just don't get it.
I don't know where you guys are at, Mike, but that's kind of what I'm counting on. No, David Johnson, love that play. He's an interesting swerve. I actually kind of like playing them together. I think that's a nice way to do things. If you're not going that direction, Melvin Gordon's a great drop down, 1,100 cheaper, and in really an optimal situation. San Diego missing a few linemen this week, but overall, I really don't think it matters. Mark Ingram might sneak under the radar here, I think, in terms of ownership, but he might be the running back to own in that game. I actually kind of like his upside a little more than Gordon's, which is bizarre for me to say, but
I think so. I mean, you look at the pricing, neither of them are really that bad. Gordon 7,600. I think one with his touches and workload, it's going to be fairly safe against this cupcake defense and the way he's being used inside the red zone. You got to like that. If things really set up perfectly where San Diego gets out ahead and can get up ahead by 2 scores, Gordon is going to absolutely go off. And I think you look at Ingram, I like him a lot at 6,800. I mean, $800 difference from Gordon. San Diego defense that I'm not really intrigued with in terms of the run stopping ability. Still a 24 team total there. At the price, I think the way he works in the passing game as well. Obviously, we've seen some cadet come into play at times. No Snead. He's going to use inside the red zone, which you got to like. So overall, I think Ingram's a pretty solid option. And as you mentioned, I think really overlooked, especially here on FanDuel. DraftKings, he might be a little bit higher ownership because his price is better.
Mark Ingram is not the guy that his perception says he is, like you said, if you watch that Falcons game, like he was in on a lot of receiving downs, that's kind of been a trend here. So 6,800, I don't care about the game flow. I think he's going to be fine either way. I'm actually more worried about Breeze than him. So I think he's a really solid play. Borderline cash, but it's just tough with some of the pay downs at other positions. I kind of want to, get the top options there. But yeah, I mean, if you want to go that direction, I'm certainly not going to knock that. Receivers, this is where things get tricky. We were talking about Doug Baldwin before the show, and I'm in Doug Baldwin denial, and I don't know what to do to get out of it because he's good. He has the results. He's clearly good. He was good last week without Russell Wilson. He was good all last year, especially the end there. And I just can't do it still, and I don't know why. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry to Doug, and I need to play him at these prices, but I just don't do it. Do you have any thoughts on this problem of mine?
I think you need to apologize to your bankroll because it could be dramatically increased if you play Doug Baldwin a bit more often than you should.
Yeah.
But I look at this matchup. I'm not quite deploying him in cash games. I don't mind the 7,400 price tag. I like Kelvin Benjamin a little bit more for a couple hundred up there. I believe he's 7,700 this week. The matchup, it's more bark than bite at this point with the Jets secondary, in my opinion. And I think, look, if you got a healthy Russell Wilson, or at least a somewhat healthy Russell Wilson, Baldwin's going to go out and get his. It's not a high team total. I don't think a lot of people are going to be on Baldwin just because you got a full slate here with a lot of other cheap wide receivers. You do have, Benjamin in that range. You do have Cooper. You have some other guys. So I think Baldwin's another low-owned play, and we've seen the upside 2 out of 3 weeks so far this season. It's hard not to like him, and I know you feel like you're either in or out on this guy at this point, but I don't know, man. I mean, he just might be a guy who you just got to keep rolling until this train ends, because the train started back in 2015.
Listen here, Nathan. Listen here, Jason.
My name's not Nathan. Oh man, that is just that's a nut punch right there, man. We've been doing pods for a long time. Brutal.
It's the A.
No, stop. No excuses from yourself. That's bad.
All right, listen. All I'm saying is you just said more bark than bite, and I appreciate you for that. And I think we can move on from there. I think that pretty much says it all. Marvin Jones, in terms of his sort of ceiling, I mean, I think we saw his ceiling clearly. I don't think we can expect 200 yards really again this year, but the matchups are continuing to be really solid. And I just think we continue to use him until he gets to that 8K range, at least in good matchups. So 76, I'm certainly going to be interested in that again.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, 7,600 is a reasonable price tag. I think this might be the first week before we see him get over the 8K mark, the last week before we see that happen. You look at that game, we talked about it with Stafford. He's just going to throw the ball a ton. Jones, I mean, tremendous upside for him, and I think even a relatively safe floor, especially in this matchup. That secondary is really banged up for Chicago. Once again, I think Lions stack using Jones, using Stafford either together as an individual. I'm all over this week, and it's really hard. I mean, at that price tag, he fits really right in there.
Certainly. Last one here is Travis Benjamin. What are your thoughts about this one? Because he's certainly not the first guy I think of in this matchup, but maybe?
So, I mean, with Travis Benjamin, we saw it the first week when Keenan Allen went out that Benjamin came out, had a monster game. He's a playmaker in terms of the deep ball. In terms of safety, I'm not plugging him in cash games. I don't think Travis Benjamin's a safe option. I get that it's a great matchup. I get the upside. But I don't think I can really use him in cash. I think he really is just strictly GPP because he's not really a reliable guy in terms of Rivers isn't going to be looking his way 100% of the time, especially with Melvin Gordon kind of getting things going on the ground. Reasonably total, I mean, look at that. It's near 29 points. We know Chargers are going to put up a lot here at home. Will he be a part of it? That's where I'm kind of in question about. I like him, but I think just tournaments is where I'm going to be leaning towards him.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the way to go. If you are doing a Rivers type of move here, I think that's totally legit. Overall, though, probably just stick to tournaments while Marvin Jones probably a cash option. Tight end, Dennis Pitta, Jordan Reed, Zach Miller. In that order, who do you like the most? And what do you think of all three after that?
I like Zach Miller here the most. Obviously, the price tag, 5K. Great matchup against Detroit. They've been horrible against tight ends so far this season. Them in Atlanta have been the worst. So obviously, I like Greg Olsen. I like Greg Olsen over Jordan Reed. But I think given that Olsen's a couple hundred more, it just was close because I believe Olsen, when I cut this off, was the fourth highest cafe value. So he was right up there as well. Jordan Reed, I like as a swerve. As we talked about Cousins, I like him a lot. I think the ownership is going to be pretty minimal. I think pairing those two, I know you and I have talked a bit about this red zone offense for Washington. Once it improves, which it will eventually, Reed's going to be a big beneficiary from that happening. So in terms of upside, we saw last year the Reed upside is a GPP type winning player, and I think that could happen here in week 4. Great matchup against Cleveland. I like the total there, the target, all these guys with him. And then Pitta, I'm not really on him this week. I like Flacco. I think he could do some damage against this Oakland secondary, who hasn't really been that great. In terms of Pitta, though, I don't know if he kind of makes my cut in terms of top 5. I don't mind him as a swerve, but I don't know if he's quite got the upside in terms of the other guys there.
I like this more than I did initially when I first saw it. He's still a main option in that offense, and obviously the Raiders have struggled to stop the pass so far this year. So I don't mind it. I do like Miller more, but I just love tight end this week. So yeah, I think he's in play at least.
Yeah,
Defense. So you got some nicer options than I got on DK. In terms of like overall defenses, you got the Patriots against the Bills, Cardinals against the Rams, and Denver against the Bucks. Those are the teams I'm really looking at. Unless I'm going with, I mean, really just the Patriots. So what are you seeing in these matchups?
I like all three here, and it's nice because New England's a pay down option at 4,500 in comparison to Arizona and Denver. You look at these games, I mean, real low totals on the other side for all three of them. Um, the one thing, I mean, you like the Patriots, the Cardinals, given that they're at home. Denver on the road there. I was a little bit surprised to see even Tampa as high as they were. They're still over 20 in terms of a team total, but with Winston throwing the ball a ton, you expect Denver to be up most of that game. I think there's just a ton of upside there in terms of, pick sixes, interceptions in general, fumbles, whatever you name it. The Broncos are going to bring it to the table, especially with their pass rush as well. And it's good to see that cafe values in kind of in favor of paying up at defense, because I do believe this is a week to really go up and pay, because Arizona, Seattle, Denver, really all intriguing options. Even Houston, I know JJ Watt's out, but I still think they're a viable GPP defense. So them in Arizona, you look at Arizona in terms of that game flow. Todd Gurley's a guy who it's pretty much their offense. And if they can't really get anything going, I don't have any faith in the passing game in this matchup against that secondary, because they're, Peterson, Matthew, they're all just kind of tremendous options back there.
Certainly. Yeah, I think at some point, so Case Keenum telegraphed one of the worst pick sixes I've ever seen in my life against the Buccaneers last week. And I just don't see how that doesn't happen again. You know what I mean? With this secondary. So like you were mentioning, some of the guys back there, they're just waiting on this guy, man. They're licking their chops at this matchup. So I tend to agree with that. And I think the Broncos are very safe as well. So, yeah, I like these calls quite a bit. So I guess that's really what we're looking at. I mean, generally speaking, I'm fine with these guys as your bases, your building blocks of a lot of your lineups, especially paying up with Cam. I mean, they give you the wide variety there. The only thing I would say is you might be able to look a little higher in terms of paying up at wide receiver. That might be where you want to go. But yeah, David Johnson, Melvin Gordon, Zach Miller, these are all the guys I'm looking at too.
Yeah, I am as well. I think there's a pretty good core here. And I think in terms of cash game, you're looking at guys like Miller, Johnson, Cam Newton. You're looking at a lot of those guys.
Certainly. So thanks for tuning in. As always, if you like the YouTube channel and you like these videos, give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Obviously, check out the optimizer, which is providing all this information for us. And we will check you out in week 5. Thanks for tuning in, guys.